Hello YouTube, how you guys doing today? Thanks for stopping by, being a passenger on the P Reacts Daily Train. I appreciate everybody that's been coming by and helping out with the channel. Please like, comment, subscribe. It really helps out, especially since I'm a newer channel. Also, it helps with the algorithm. Don't forget, this is not a substitute for the original content, so go over to the original artist, watch it on their channel, give them a like, show them some love. Also, we don't redistribute any of the content, so we're following all the copyright rules. My name is P, and we'll get started on this video as soon as we see our disclaimer. Alrighty, today's video, we have top 10 strange discoveries made during road construction. Now, this is not a substitute for the original, so go over to their channel. Watch it on their channel, give them a like, show them some love, subscribe to them. We're only a reaction. So let's get this started and check this out.
Mass graves under highways, dinosaur eggs cracked open by bulldozers, and entire Viking villages forgotten to time. These are strange discoveries made during road construction. Back in 2009, crews working on a road in Dorset, England began hitting human remains. Not one or two, dozens. So construction stopped and archaeologists were brought in to investigate. What they found was a mass grave containing 54 young men, all dating back to around 970 to 980 CE. The bodies were arranged in a pit tightly packed with their heads separated and placed together. No signs that this had been a respectful burial. They were all crammed together for one, and they hadn't been buried with anything. At first, no one knew who they were or why they ended up there. Isotope testing on the teeth and bones later showed the men had grown up in Scandinavia, not England. Their diet matched regions like Denmark and southern Sweden, so it seemed like there was a very good chance these guys were Vikings. They were probably captured and executed. The location made sense too. There are historical records of Viking raids along England's southern coast during the exact time period the bones were dated to. Vikings didn't usually get buried like this. Their graves are normally individual and they do it ceremonially. Big anonymous pit basically never happens, and definitely not one that stays intact for over 1,000 years. Road construction just happened to cut right through it. Project got delayed while they dug everything up properly, and now it's considered one of the biggest Viking finds ever made in Britain. Back in 2015,
That's crazy. Vikings found in England, and they're from Scandinavia. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Kind of sad for them though. But yeah, let's get back to this.
construction crews were working on a new road in China's Guangdong province. They started noticing something strange in the dirt. First, it looked like a cluster of large rounded stones packed closely together, but the shapes were too uniform. When they started finding more and more of them, it became obvious that it wasn't just rock. What they'd stumbled on was a nest of fossilized dinosaur eggs. Paleontologists confirmed these things were millions of years old, dating back to the late Cretaceous period. Some of them were still remarkably intact, which is rare when you're dealing with fossils this old. A few were even found still arranged in a circular nesting pattern, exactly how the dinosaurs would have laid them. In 1931, construction crews working near US Route 59 outside Pelican Rapids, Minnesota, came across a nearly complete human skeleton buried in the soil. At first, workers assumed it was probably recent. Were very wrong though. The remains belonged to a teenage girl who lived around 6000 BCE, so she was about 8,000 years old. She became known as Minnesota Woman. Alongside her skeleton were stone tools, animal bones, and a small conch shell pendant that likely came from the Gulf of Mexico, thousands of miles away. That was a very important detail. It meant people living in North America that long ago weren't just isolated groups barely surviving. They were traveling huge distances, trading with each other, knew their way around more than anyone thought at the time. It was amazing how complete her skeleton was. Usually when you find remains that far back, they're just fragments, but her bones were really well preserved because they've been sealed in this glacial lake sediment for thousands of years, until road construction cut through it, of course. Archaeologists had to totally rethink how they understood early settlement patterns after this. Today, Minnesota Woman is one of the most important early human discoveries in North America. In 19
That's crazy. She's like well preserved because of the glacial stuff. And to walk, oh my gosh. Walk from the Gulf down there all the way up to Minnesota, man. That's probably what, 1,200 miles roughly, maybe a little more, maybe 1,500 miles. Man, that's nuts. Be a long walk. I know I wouldn't want to do that. Heck with that.
1951 road and airport development in Japan's Akita Prefecture exposed something completely unexpected beneath the soil. Massive stone circles, arranged in really precise patterns. The site would later be known as the Asodatai Stone Circles. Scientists figured out they were about 4,000 years old, way before Japan had any written history. Someone had moved these stones from riverbeds several kilometers away and set them up in big circles, some over 40 meters wide. No one's entirely sure what the circles were used for. There's no evidence people lived inside them. The best guess is they were used for rituals or maybe community gatherings based on the seasons, but there's no way to know for sure. Really wild part is this almost got completely destroyed. The early road plans would have just bulldozed right over it before anyone realized what it was. So once archaeologists showed up, they changed the construction plans to save the site. Now it's protected, and it's one of Japan's most important prehistoric sites. If that road hadn't exposed it, those circles would have probably still been buried and nobody would have even known they existed. England again.
Yeah, what's going on with the circles? That's a little strange to me. All these circles.
And this time in 2023, they're upgrading the A47 in Norfolk when they find the remains of an entire medieval village that just vanished from history. Workers were widening the road when they started finding foundations, broken pottery, animal bones, and household items scattered under the farmland next to the highway. Archaeologists dated it somewhere between 1100 and 1400. There were clear signs this was a real village. There were homes, places where they prepared their food, metal tools. There were also pieces of musical instruments. Strange part is there's zero written record about why it disappeared. The most likely explanation is the Black Death in the mid-1300s, which killed so many people, whole villages just got emptied out and were never rebuilt. Eventually, they would have gotten erased from maps and everyone forgot about them. This road construction exposed all of this stuff that farmers had been plowing over for generations, totally oblivious to what was underneath. In 2003, road and housing development near Amesbury, Wiltshire, not far from Stonehenge, led to one of the strangest prehistoric discoveries ever made in Britain. Workers came across a burial containing 7 men, later named the Boscombe Bowmen. Remains dated back to around 2300 BCE during the early Bronze Age. What made this interesting right away was the isotope analysis showing these guys grew up in different parts of Britain, maybe even continental Europe, before getting buried together. They had flint arrowheads, pottery, and stone tools buried with them, so they were probably also skilled archers, pretty important in their communities. The fact that they were all buried together means they were connected somehow. Maybe they were family, maybe they traveled together as a group. This discovery changed how archaeologists think about early Britain because it proved people were moving around way more than anyone thought, traveling long distances generations before roads or any kind of written records existed. In Suffolk, England, construction on a road called Europa Way led to finding this big late Bronze Age settlement from about 3,000 years ago. They found it during the prep work for actual
Those guys could have been in the military or something together, and that would explain why they're from different areas, but they're all buried together because maybe they had some kind of fight or some mini war or something with one of the other neighboring countries or whatever at the time.
Improving the road, after the soil showed signs of human activity instead of just natural layers. Archaeologists found the remains of multiple roundhouses, storage pits, and work areas, so this was a permanent settlement. It wasn't just a temporary camp. They also found a cremation cemetery nearby with burial urns and shallow pits. Some urns still had burned human bone in them, which helped date the site. There were pottery fragments, flint tools, a bunch of bronze objects. These people were already doing metalworking. The settlement layout showed they organized their space. Domestic areas were clearly separated from where they buried people. Of course, construction paused while they excavated and documented everything, and once that was done, the road project continued. Not many late Bronze Age settlements in eastern England have been excavated on this scale. A lot have been destroyed by modern development before anyone's gotten a chance to study them properly. During excavation work for Loop 88 near Lubbock, Texas, construction crews started finding these huge fossilized bones buried under layers of sediment. So construction stopped so that paleontologists could step in. The remains turned out to be Ice Age megafauna, including the bones of a giant ground sloth. These things lived in North America over 20,000 years ago, when the climate was a lot cooler and the land supported a lot bigger species than what we have now. The bones were really well preserved. They were stuck in compact sediment It hadn't been disturbed for thousands of years, so that stopped them from eroding. Between 2017 and 2019, construction crews were working on expanding Sweden's E18 motorway. They started coming across Viking Age remains along different stretches of the road. It kept happening over and over again as construction moved forward. They found the remains of farms, longhouses, burial grounds, and funerary pyres. Some of the graves had both people and animals in them. In a few cases, horses were buried alongside humans, which usually meant the person had higher status. The sites were dated to somewhere between 500 and 1050, covering both the late Iron Age and the Viking period. What stood out was how spread out everything was. Instead of one big village, this was a whole network of farms and burial sites scattered across the landscape. In 1978, when road construction was happening in Laguna Canyon,
Kind of a cool scene right there.
California, the crews cut into the hillside and started finding massive fossilized bones buried in the rock. Those bones turned out to be from an ancient whale that lived around 15 million years before, back when most of coastal California was underwater. The fossils were embedded in solid rock, which helped preserve them for millions of years until construction cut straight through the layer. In some cases, the fossils belonged to whale species that were previously unknown to science, and it actually helped researchers better understand how whales evolved over time. That has been the video for today. I will catch you specifically in the next one.
All right, nice video. Interesting. Learned a little bit about this and that and all kinds of crazy stuff. Interesting discoveries. Yeah. That is interesting. All right. All right. We'll talk to you later. You guys don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know if you want to see more of this kind of content on the channel. Leave a comment in the comments. And you beautiful people have a great day. We do have a merch store now. There's a link in the description. We just added a bunch more items. And we'll talk to you later. Goodbye for now.